Rosemary Fillmore Rhea. Rosemary Fillmore Rhea was the minister of Unity of Port Richey from 1981 to 1990, when there were 500 members of this community. Rosemary Fillmore Rhea was an amazing human. She was born in 1925 and she passed in 2012 at the healthy young age of 87. She was the granddaughter of our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who founded the Unity movement. She was the only person born at Unity Farm. And I say Unity Farm because that's what they called it when she was born. It was the time in our history when Gandhi was being thrown off the train, and he was in South Africa, and they were all studying Tolstoy and Tolstoy's farm, and this idea that communities that lived simply and served mightily could heal the world. And they bought this property, and it's now called Unity Village. It's its own city outside of Kansas City. But at the turn of the last century, it was quite different than it is today. There were no fancy hotels. There were these cottages, and they had tent meetings, and they had an outdoor amphitheater, and they would go hiking and camp together and sing and have, very similar to what you might have experienced with the bluegrass music, jam sessions with all the different instruments. And Charles Fillmore loved music, and he loved parties, and they loved to dance. And a lot of what they did was take music that they knew and put lyrics into the music that were prayers or healing jingles, like every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well. Who knows that song, right? Mama's little, whatever, love shortbread, right? That's like a common tune, right? So do that with me. Every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. I'm so glad every little cell in my body is happy and well. Every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well. Every little cell in my body is happy, every little cell in my body is well. You just stimulated your brain and your body to manufacture healthy cells. And you just gave a message from your brain to all the synaptic connections that form new cells in your body to activate. And the Fillmores knew this in their own way. They didn't know it like we know it now through all this neuroscience that is proving what they already knew, that the mind, and especially the mind with attention and music, because music is something that stimulates the farthest reaches of our brain, which is not just in our head. We now know the brain and neurological connections and neurons actually live throughout the body. And so the brain is in the body. And there's a direct connection in a healthy person between the brain and the gut and the heart. So when you are an integrated, authentic, truth-telling person, there's an energy to it. And if you genuinely connect all of those three energy centers, you will feel that integration. And it's a measurable state. They now know when we're in that state that we give birth to new brain cells. And music helps. some music was actually composed by the masters to help us to regenerate. They say Mozart and Bach and Beethoven wrote certain symphonies to heal people. There are symphonies written to stimulate peace. Symphonies written to stimulate harmony between people. And it really is amazing, isn't it? Because it's like all these discordant notes come together into this coherent piece of music that then heals us. And Charles Fillmore believed that, those little jingles really matter, because you know how you hear something on television and then you wake up and it's kind of annoying because you hear it again, or you hear it in your sleep and can't get it out of your mind? Well, he believed that that could be a really good thing if the message was a really good message, right? Like every little sound of my body is happy, right? That is really good. So a lot of our old Unity hymnal is that way. It has small, repetitive things. When my first music director was a jazz pianist, and he was quite an amazing composer. And when he first looked at our Unity hymnal, he's like, "This is like roller derby music." I go, "Yeah, that would explain it." Because he was trying to do a certain, work with it, and he probably wasn't a musicologist, and so, he just used familiar music, like roller derby music. So Rosemary Fillmore Rhea couldn't have had a more idyllic childhood. She was born on a farm, and if you could please not take any more pictures, Larry, I love you, but I'm very phobic of pictures, so I really don't appreciate being photographed while I'm talking. It's taken me a long time to get to the point where I can ignore the video. For people snapping at me, it unnerves me. It distracts me. So, back to Rosemary Fillmore Rhea. She was born into this idyllic community. That's intention was to live simply upon the earth, grow everything, and eat mostly fruits and vegetables, because they have the first vegetarian inn in Kansas City, and practice spiritual teachings, especially group prayer and meditation. They did it every day, 3 times a day, and silence. Sometimes our co-founders were in silence up to 6 hours a day. And they would stay up all night. If someone was having a difficult childbirth, they would stay up all night and pray for that mother until they heard the baby was born and things were okay. They were beautiful, unpretentious, down-to-earth people. And they cared about the people who were right there with them, doing the work. And during the Depression, all kinds of people came to Unity that were out of work. And they put them to work. Craftsmen spent months and months carving doors and making the most beautiful pictures and affirmations on the ceilings of the chapels and on the walls of the buildings. It's an incredible place to go. Rosemary's father was an architect, and he was very touched by Italian Renaissance architecture. So many of the buildings are his design based on Renaissance Italian architecture, but he also wanted to give it a homey feel, and so many of the places where you would stay if you went there are like Cotswold cottages. So it has a really wonderful balancing energy to it, where for over 150 years, there's been continuous prayer. And Rosemary used to say that, it wasn't until she was older that she realized her life wasn't normal. And that not everybody's grandfather went into the silence, and would just close his eyes and pray at any moment during the day. And she herself wasn't a vegetarian, but everyone thought she was. So whenever she would go to visit somebody in her town, they would feed her vegetables. She had wonderful stories to tell about all of you, not you personally, but about this community. And she would often ask me, do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into? She never wanted to be a minister. She actually created and hosted the Daily Word on television and co-produced the Word from Unity, which at the time, in the 50s and early 60s, was on 1,000 television, different networks and radio stations nationwide. And that was in the early days of TV, so that was a really huge thing. Unfortunately, Unity didn't follow her advice and go in that direction. It's only really been recently that we stepped up to the plate of technology. But she did become ordained because her husband, Ralph Ray, wanted to be a minister. And they were in Del Rey for a minute. And then they got called to Unity of Port Richey. And when she got there, her husband had a mild stroke. And so she became your minister. Kicking and screaming and shaking. She said, first time she did a wedding, she shook so much that the bride, put her hand over her and told her it was going to be okay. And she said that's how she was when she did her first memorial service too. And every first that she did. But actually, she told me a few stories about Unity of Port Richey. One of my favorite all-time stories is the one about the very bad Boy Scouts. It was a Christmas Eve that she said she would never forget. The choir director was having a spat with a soloist, and the soloist left the church before the Christmas Eve service. So they had to tweak some of the songs fairly quickly. Things were already going wrong. It was her first Christmas Eve candlelighting. And she thought she did a really good job setting up the candlelighting. Told everyone as she guided them out of meditation that there was a very special message for them from God. Had them make a wish, blow out their candle. And when some of them opened their affirmation that was attached to the little candle, she saw these horrible, shocked expressions because those very bad Boy Scouts had written some very bad words on those affirmations. Very bad Boy Scouts. They had offered to help to wrap, hundreds of candles. They had 500 people, so hundreds of candles. They didn't want to do it all themselves, so the Boy Scout troop, and some of them used the F words, S words, other colorful words, and just wrote them over the information and wrapped it without anybody knowing. So those very lucky people got a very special Christmas Eve present. And so I would return stories for her. Have I ever told you about the palm tree story? It's like a Zen koan, this story. I have never known what this story means. But it was at the time when they were renovating the church at Unity of the Palm Beaches. There were 777 people coming to 3 services. This was also during the 80s and 90s. And people left the church, Reverend Hal Rosencrantz told me, because they didn't get to choose the color. They didn't like the color that was chosen for this new seats, right? And I thought that was pretty funny. And he told me, but he said there was this one person that was studying feng shui, and every time she came through the line, she would say, these palm trees have to go. This is really bad shui. You have to move them. They're in the wrong location. And he kind of liked them where they were, so he ignored her for a while until he could stand it no longer. And so one time he just decided he would do what she wanted, and he placed them where she wanted. And she came through the line, and he said, "Look." And she never came back again.
Oh.
What does that story mean? What does it even mean? I have no idea. But I think what he was trying to communicate to me was, if you're going to do this gig called ministry, don't be attached. Go with the flow, right? Rosemary Fillmore Rhea was a world traveler, a filmmaker, a visionary. She met with kings, the Queen of Thailand, Prime Minister Nehru. She met with movie stars who helped to give the daily word on television. For free, they would just do it because they were daily word readers and they wanted to support this. She met producers, and she was this ambassador of peace and love and unity wherever she went. So we were so fortunate to have her in the DNA of this community. She was an elder to me. Not that she was that much older, but she was someone who brought clarity from their learned experience and this incredible, spacious heart to nurture the future generations. And I felt that from her. I would say things like, "Do you know what they did? Blah, 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 blah." While I was in ministerial school, I can't remember what it was. And she would say, "They haven't killed it yet. You know why? It's bigger than them. Unity is bigger than this place. Unity is bigger than the movement. Unity can never be destroyed." An elder sows seeds for something new. They plant trees they're never going to sit under in the shade. And they are creative in a way that gives unprecedented growth and blooms to the next generation. That's Dr. Clarice Pinkola Estes, who just recently published a series called How to Be an Elder. She says, what makes an elder a clear mind and talented heart, one who is young while old and old while young, an activist of the soul, she says. And she makes this great analogy that an elder is like an ancient tree. Its roots go down and out for miles in every direction, nourishing things that can't be seen. And that goes way up and can see beyond what others see down below. The old ones travel underground and over land, and we meet them in the middle. And I think that they see in us things that we often cannot see in ourselves and give us the nutrition that we need to sustain the moment, to grow into and bloom in ways they know are possible for us that we may not even know. Now, a lot of us, as we enter into our elder years, we begin to understand that. The power of just one interaction with someone, the power of a word, the power of integrity, modeling for people that are around us. Reverend Rosemary Fillmore Rhea was a truth teller. She was honest about what she thought about the unity movement. She joked about it. She didn't take it too seriously. She once said, "There are so many people walking around talking to my dead relatives, it's frightening. How can they ever rest in peace?" She was so strong and forgiving and courageous. She sued her own family for discrimination. She lost. She still was willing to be a strong part of that movement, even though she felt she was much more qualified to do some of the jobs than the current people they were hiring. And I would have to agree. I hired a lot of wounded people on the GI Bill, and it hurt the movement. She hated when I would say that, though. She would say, "Not my Ralph." He wasn't one of those, and he wasn't. But there were a lot of chauvinist men in the union movement that held the movement back, actually moved it back from where it had been when she was a child on Union Farm. And they haven't killed it yet because it's bigger and it has a life of its own. And probably there was a reason for all of the women and men to come together into this complex, but not complicated, organism called unity. As we look at our complex and conflicted world, we might agree that one of the most needed ingredients to bring forth today is unity, is harmony, is the ability to forgive. First ourselves for mistakes that we've made, and then maybe others, our country, the world. When we study the history of civilization, this is Rosemary's words, we see that there are old resentments, old hatreds, old injustices, which continually stir the fires of revenge, simmering somewhere in the human psyche. And if you know history, you know it's so true. What's going on in the Ukraine and Russia, if you know history, has been going on for centuries, centuries. And there are some who fuel those fires. Religious feuds, ethnic feuds, family feuds, feuds that continue from generation to generation. The memories of past injustices roll down through the ages, and few people seem willing to forgive. The light of God shining in the world award this year goes to Basil Braveheart, Lakota voter, who's been instrumental in multi-generational forgiveness. I think that's really a step forward. I think Rosemary's dancing around his head because the healing process has to begin with us. It has to start right here. I'll end with this quote from Romans. A good place for Paul to say this in a letter to the Romans. Think about that. Repay no evil for evil, Paul said, but take thought for what is noble in the sight of all. If possible, so far as it depends upon you, live peaceably with all. Beloved, never avenge yourselves. If your enemy is hungry, feed them. If they're thirsty, give them drink. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. One time someone asked the Venerable Bhante Dharmawara, he was in his hundreds at the time, what the greatest evil in the world is. He said, look in the mirror, because the greatest evil is fear. And you have to be able to look fear in the eye, because the greatest detriment to being who you are and not part of the herd mentality or part of who people want you to be, or succumbing to what the common opinion about things are, is facing fear and forgiving yourself when you can't step up to it, and continuing to move in the direction of seeing in each other and seeing in the world the capacity for courageous action in the midst of chaos, contradiction, and confusion. I think one of the things about our time is we call ourselves the information age, but we don't have a lot of it. We have a very limited amount of information. When we go on other people's opinions about other people, other people's opinions about what we should do, who we should, how we should think, how we should behave, who we should hate. So if anything, my hope for us is that we can be a non-polarizing force. That's what unity means. A harmonizing force. A place where we agree to disagree. A place where we can engage freely in dialogue. A place where we can visualize the whole humanity as something great. A keynote species. Something that when we look back on this moment in history, and we look at the whole world, we say, that species made a really positive difference in the world. Here are some affirmations from Rosemary Fillmore when she gave a talk years ago here. So repeat after me. The forgiving love of Jesus Christ,
the forgiving love of Jesus Christ
flows through my mind and heart.
Flows through my mind and heart.
I am free.
I am free.
I am aware of the presence of love.
I am aware of the presence of love.
It's within me.
It's within me.
It's healing and restoring my soul.
It's healing and restoring my soul.
I let go of any feeling of anger.
I let go of any feeling of anger.
I let go of resentment.
I let go of resentment.
I let go of hurt.
I let go of hurt.
I am a spiritual being.
I am a spiritual being.
No person or experience can keep my good from me.
No person or experience can keep my good from me.
There might be someone that you're having a difficulty with, or someone that you don't particularly like. You can think of them when you say this. I release you to God.
I release you to God.
I bless you on your way.
I bless you on your way.
I forgive you.
I forgive you.
I am forgiven.
I am forgiven.
When we meet again,
When we meet again,
it will be in the spirit of love.
it will be in the spirit of love.
Isn't that beautiful?
Mm-hmm.
Want to do that again? All right, think of somebody else, or the same person, doesn't matter. I release you to God.
I release you to God.
I bless you on your way.
I bless you on your way.
I forgive you.
I forgive you.
I am forgiven.
I am forgiven.
When we meet again,
When we meet again,
it will be in the spirit of love.
it will be in the spirit of love.
Thank you, God,
Thank you, God,
that all this has come to pass.
that all this has come to pass.